Hi everyone, I'm Angela and welcome to Crafting with Angela. Today I will be showing you how to make junk mail beads as part of Margreth and Toni's ABC April 2025. I'm back with another video in Margreth's and Toni's April challenge. I'm really excited for today's one. So it's Friday the 11th of April. That makes today's letter J, and I will be showing you how to make junk mail beads. This is a really straightforward process, and you only need some very basic tools. First of all, you need some junk mail. So this is a shopping catalogue. That works. Anything that you have that comes through like this will work. We're going to need a craft knife and a ruler and a cutting mat. You will also need some glue, and it works best if it's a fine tip applicator. And then you want something to turn your beads on. So I have a couple of different things here. These two tools here are quilling tools. So paper quilling is where you turn paper in to make shapes and flowers and things like that. And these are really useful. But the one thing to notice is, although there's this long fine tip here, the slot for the paper is only the first half of it. So if you're going to be doing small strips, that's great, but it's very difficult to get an even turn if you're using paper that's wider than the slot in your bead. I have a pokey tool that's a fairly constant space from here on to the top. You can use that as long as you don't poke yourself at the end of it. Or you can also use cotter pins. So these are cotter pins that I have. I have a box with about 6 or 7 different sizes of cotter pins. Some of them are very small, like this one. This wouldn't work for beads because it's going to be too difficult to turn and it's not going to give you a very good center core to the bead. You need to be able to put a thread through. So these are the two bigger sizes that I have. And to be honest, I find the bigger one is easier to use. You can use a straw, you can use a skewer, anything that you have that's relatively straight and that you can bend a piece of paper around, you can use. And what we're going to be making is, here's some I made already. Range of beads like this. This one was made with paper, a scrap of paper, so it's all the one colour. The rest of these were made with junk mail, and you can see the difference in colours and patterns just depending on what type of paper you use. The one thing that's worth pointing out, these ones here I made with my quilling tool, and they have a very thin core right at the centre. So if we look at this part that's in here, it's very thin. And it's just worth remembering, whatever you're making for, what are you putting in the inside? You're just putting the thread, that's absolutely fine. But if you're putting it onto you're doing a dangle like this, that should be okay. But if you're doing something thicker, just beware that you may end up with a cord that's too small. So with all that in mind, let's get started. I'll clear everything out and I'll show you how to start making these. So this is my junk mail that I am using today. It's just from a local shop, and what it is, if this was stapled together, you could just pull the staples out. This isn't stapled, this is glued together. So what I want to do is pull the two pages like this and kind of gently ease them out. And then making sure you're grabbing both pages at the same time, so you try not to tear the center. You just want to kind of pull it like this. Sometimes you will see a tear like this in the middle. That's fine. It's not the best, but I can show you how to make that work. These pages are just slightly smaller than A4 size. So let me see, the double page ends up being 36 centimeters by 28, And really I want to be using the whole 36cm strip of this. But if you get a part like this where there's a tear in the middle, you can use 2 pieces to do the same thing. So what I'm going to start off doing is this part down here that's joined, I'm going to cut it off. I'm going to line it up nice and neatly on my page to make sure, or on my cutting mat to make sure it's nice and square, at least as square as I can make it. Come in with my cutting knife. I'm going to go down that white line there. Come in with my cutting knife and just cut it. When I'm cutting with a knife and a ruler and scissors, when I'm cutting with a knife and a ruler, I always like to make sure it's cut before I move the ruler because it's very difficult to get it placed again. So this piece is just under the 2-inch mark. So what I'm going to do is probably try and cut this. I'll show you how to cut it into a couple of strips. I have already cut, just so you're aware, I have a couple of 3/4 inch strips here from the previous page, and I have a 3/4 inch strip that was then cut diagonally in half as well. And what I'm going to do now is just show you how you can cut this into a type of bead that gives you more of a, I'm just trying to see, this kind of cylindrical shape where it's wide and it's thinner at the edges in the middle. So what you want to do there is consider about how wide you want your beads to be. I'm going to open this up. Normally I would do this marking in pencil, but I want you to be able to see it on screen, so I'm going to use a heavier pen. And what I am going to do here is there is just under 2 inches, so if I cut these at 1/2 inch, what I want to do then is come in at one end and mark every 1/2 inch. So I'm just putting lines at 1/2 inch, 1 inch and 1.5 inches. And then at the other end, from the same end, first of all, I want to mark in 1/4 inch. And then I want to mark 3/4 inch, 1.25 inches. And if we, and we can just make it to the, I'm trying to work out what that is. The 1.75 inches. Now, what I would do if I was, if my ruler was long enough, is I would literally just line these up. Let me see if I can find a longer ruler. Okay, so I was trying to find a ruler that would work with this, and it's difficult to find something that size, so I have my really large Crafter's Companion cutting mat, and what I'm going to do here is just use this as the straight edge. And all I want to do is line up the 1/4 inch mark on this side with the 1/2 inch mark on the other side and draw a line. Keep this point the same and line it up on that side. And what you're doing here is creating a set of triangles. Just moving the ruler from the side there because it's causing a bit of a problem. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that particularly well. Let me just show it to you. So what we have is a range of triangular shapes that go back and forward from one side to the other. And then what I'm going to do, I could use my edge that I was using there, but equally, because we've drawn the line now, we now know where this is going. We can cut it with a smaller ruler. So this time I'm just going to follow the lines. The first piece that you cut, you discard. Just checking that that is actually cutting the whole way across. Okay. Go all the way out to the other end now. Discard that piece of paper, and then we are just keeping the remaining pieces once we cut them. As I said, what I'm trying to do before I move the ruler is just make sure that that has cut through the whole way along. Because once you move the ruler, it is near impossible to get it back in the same spot. And I've just said that and done exactly the wrong thing. And let me get the last bit along here. Oops. Okay, don't be as rough with it as I was there, since I've just managed to cut that off. If that isn't working for you, mine isn't for some reason. I think my blade's not quite as sharp as it could be. What else you can do, instead of using the scissors and the blade, instead of using the knife and the ruler, is you can come in with a pair of scissors, and you have drawn the line here. And just cut along the line. So I have cut them out and discarded the ones that didn't quite work. So the top ones that weren't the right shape, and then the couple with the knife that I cut to give a really jagged edge. Got rid of all of them. So of these three that is left from that 1 2-inch strip, the wider you make the bead, the easier the cutting out will be. And I'll show you that when I roll. So this is one of the other beads that I have cut, or pages I've cut out, and what you can see here is it's the same shape. So it starts at one end, it goes to a point at the other. These ones, the point is halfway along the width. This one, the point is at one side. Just gives a slightly different shape of bead. And then I also have a 3/4 inch cut bead art strip that is completely straight. And I'm going to show you how to make these 3 beads today, and then I'll show you that there's some other shapes that you can make if you're interested. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the straight one. It's the easiest one to start with, And you can have a look and see what colours you have. For the straight ones, it's only the last inch of paper or something like that that's going to show. You can see if you want that pattern or if you want the green. I'm going to do this pattern to end with. So if I want that to end with, I need to start at the opposite end, and I need to make sure I'm rolling up with that on the outside. So I take my pokey tool and just put a bit of pressure under it there, and you're just trying to gently roll the bead up. You want to keep an eye that because this doesn't have the slot to keep it in place, it will easily unroll. That's fine if it does. Just go back to the beginning and start. What you can do if you want to, if you feel this is going to be a bit difficult to get managing, I'm just going to take the top of my glue here. What I'm going to do, because this is has no slot on it, I am going to get it lined up, start it a bit, just do a couple of glue. Sorry, it's difficult to see this because I know my hand's in the way. Put a very thin line of glue there, and that will hold it in place, so if you know it's not going to easily fall off. And then what you want to do is hold the paper this way, so you see if it slipped there, it just went back to that glued part. And all we want to do now is roll it, and you're keeping the edges, because this is a straight bead, we're going to keep the edges in place as they go. Whatever way works easiest for you. Just always try and remember to keep a hand on the bead when you're turning it to keep it in place. And with this one, you can see that my edge on this side has fallen off a bit, so you can always tap it down a bit at the end. Don't worry too much. Going over that middle bit. Okay, just have the rest of this bit to roll. Okay. Try and pull it tight. It's definitely easier to roll with the a handle or something to turn. And what I would say is whether you prefer rolling it this way or the other way, it's completely up to you. And then I've come to the end, I'm just going to put a thin layer of glue along that tip and then continue to roll it, and then that holds that down, and this pulls off, and we can set it down, and we can come in and just give a tap on it to make sure it's, and this actually shows you a really good thing of the board I was talking about in the center. So this one here, you can see that it's quite a wide board, and that's because the tool I made was quite wide. But if you don't have a specialized tool in any way, that works just as well as anything else. Next, I'm going to use one of my quilling tools. Quilling tools are not overly expensive, but again, like I said, the problem is the end. If I show you this, if I put this in, you can see we're only getting about halfway through. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make a massive difference. It just means that one half is not turning as well as it could be. So again, do exactly the same thing. Because this has the slot on it, it is much easier to turn. You'll see I'm able to turn it with just one hand. I'm not worried so much about this paper on the end moving. Okay, I'm just rolling it up, and what you'll see is apart from the color at the very edges, it doesn't really matter what else you have on the bead. It's only going to be the last inch or so of the pattern that's going to show. Okay, and this one you can see we started wider. This is the one that is the the point is in the middle of the width. So just going to come in, put a strip of a small dab of glue along there. Get that lined up properly again, since I moved it in the middle of that. In the middle of gluing it. Try not to pull the end of it too much. That does happen. All you do now is pull it until it gets tight again. It will eventually get tight. And then it's just a case of re-rolling it up. You can see it's kind of gone off center a wee touch. Oops. And there we have that bead where it's narrower at the edges, coming into a much rounder, much more solid. And if we hold these two together, this one was made with my pokey tool, this one was made with my quilling tool, and you can definitely see the difference in the center. This one would be fine with a thread or an earring fastening, but you wouldn't be able to put cord through it. This one you could put cord or ribbon or anything through the center. So do keep that in mind when you're making this. So that's that tool and this tool. And then finally, much prefer to use, it's a cotter pin. What that means is it's two straight edges with a rounded bit. So it's one piece of metal twisted over. This isn't tight the whole way along. That's absolutely fine. What I mean by that is if we look, there's gaps in between those two. I don't think that's an issue. What I am going to do is just push it between the pages, and if I pull it down to the end, that end just gets a bit tighter and holds it in place. Because there's that pin head, I can use that to hold it. This is the piece of strip of paper that is triangle, but the point is on one of the edges. So the edge that the point is on, that's the one you want to keep level. So that's this point here on the closest to the center of the cotter pin. And all I am doing is rolling this up. And what I'm going to show you with this one is what to do if you've got junk mail like this that's a bit weak in the middle. And we can see here's the middle coming up. This one isn't weak. It hasn't torn, but in fact let's accidentally pull too. Oh, it's torn. It was too weak. What you can do, first of all, is come in with your glue, put a very thin layer of glue along that end, and glue that piece down. And it's almost like you've made a single bead. And then you can come in with this piece that's torn off, put some glue on the bead where that was, and then line this up. You can struggle to get the piece of paper up. Line it up, remembering that you need it to get in line with the right edge. And roll in exactly the same way. And it's basically as if you have joined the two ends together. I'm trying to keep this end together. And like I said, it doesn't matter if you're rolling it to yourself with the piece of paper on top, or if you've turned over and you're rolling it to yourself with the piece of paper underneath. Either works. It's just whichever is easiest for you to work with. Then we'll get to the last inch or so of the page, and I'm just coming in here with my glue. You don't need a lot of glue, especially when you get these really fine edges, because as you roll it, the glue is going to come out. And when it comes out, I just like to twist it a bit more, and it just helps seal that down. So what I do now is I try and pull. You can either pull this out like this, and then if you do that, you just need to push it back together again, remembering that as you push it down, line one end up you're going to have that kind of cylindrical bead. And if we do this, you can see now we have the 3 different sizes of cores depending on what tool you use to create it. Sometimes that happens with the holes in. If it doesn't, what you can sometimes do when you pull this out, there's this part here is and you'll find that it's sitting in the middle like that. You know, it's across the middle. All you need to do is take some kind of tool in and push it over to the side just so it isn't taking up valuable space in the middle of the core. Just makes it a bit easier to do. So that's the basic principle of making paper beads. So I've shown you 1, 2 and 4. The triangular bead with a strip with the point in the center of the width, the triangular bead with the point at one edge, and the straight cut bead. I have made all of these just to show you exactly what they look like. So this is the first one, point in the center, and like we said, you can see that it is wide and it thickens as it comes to the center of the bead. This one with the point at one end, it's again wide, thicker at one side rather than the center, so it's more of a cone shape. Then these next 3 are very similar. So this is the one that's flat, square end, and you can see here, I don't know if you can see, but there is a line here. That's the edge of the paper, okay? And again, only the last inch or so that is shown of the paper. This is this one where it's straight most of the way, and then the last 1.5 inches or so we've cut it into almost like a snake's tongue or a point. So if I use my pokey tool, what you can see here is this is the edge here, that black line here and here, and then the actual end of the paper is here, and it's straight, but it's really difficult to see. This is exactly the same thing, except we've curved the end. Ignore my drawing of a curve because I can't freehand a curve at all. What I did, and what I found when I was cutting this out, once I cut the square, the strip with the plain end, I folded it in half lengthways and then cut out one side to the tip, and that allowed both sides to be the same. And what you can see here is, again, we have the edge coming in along here, and it goes down to what hopefully you can see is a more of a point there. This one with the cut straight and then you cut a V in it this way. What you can see here is wider at the ends, it comes into a finer point at the middle. The length of this determines how thin the middle is. If we had this down here, there'd be very little difference in the width along the bead. If you had it further up this way, it would be much thinner in the center. Okay, this one is the reverse of that one, where you have similar to the first one, but because it's more angled in, it's much more of a stepped bead, if that makes sense. So you have the width and then it comes up in almost blocks rather than that thinner edge there. And then finally, the most complicated one I have here, which looks like a giant M. We put it down, we have thicker at each edges, it then thins out and then thickens with this inner piece. Again, if we made this all the way to the end, you know, if we cut that down here, the middle section would be as wide as the 2 side sections. So it just depends what you want to do with them, but that's the different form of make beads. And once you've made these beads, the world's your oyster. You know, I got all of these beads out of half a page of that junk mail, and I think there was 10 or 12 pages in it, so I could have made absolute tons of beads. Once I get them like this, there's a couple of things you can do. You could put them on, if I got my pokey tool again, and you put your pokey tool in the middle, you could then add a glue to it, so either a PVA glue, glossy accents, matte medium, something like that, whether you want it shiny or dull. And that would give it more protection, as long as you remember to do the edge swell, but it means it won't fall apart. If you have a bead like this where it's all the one color, you could possibly decoupage tiny flowers or tiny words or things on the outside of it if you wanted. If you had, I'm going to pick this one just as an example. I have this bead, and after I've done it, I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I don't actually like that color setup. I don't think it looks particularly well for what I want to use it. I could come in and paint it with acrylic paint, either paint it all black or gold or whatever, or come in and paint it with one color and splatter it with another. And again, that would help seal it, but it would also then change the look of it, because instead of having this scrap look, you would have whatever color you needed. So these are just paper beads. You can color them, you can sand them, you can do whatever you want with them. But what I like to do is use them to create dangles. So this one I have here isn't using paper beads. This is my normal beads. But you can create a dangle like this, or the plastic beads I should say. You can create a dangle like this and put one of those beads on instead of that centerpiece. You can use dangles for your pokey tools. So where's my pokey tool? So again, this center bead looks like a coffee bean here, but I could have just as easily put one of my thinner beads that I created today. If it had been the right color scheme, I could have put that on. You can use them for journal jewelry. So whether you're sticking them off a ribbon that you're using as a closure, or putting on the outside edge, whatever you want to do, you could stick them onto paper clips or onto any kind of safety pin type fixture, and they would look really good. And like I said, you can make these are made out of paper, but really you can make them these be made out of junk mail with the exception of that one. I could colour them. I can use scrap papers, which is what this was, to create a bead. This is a giant bead because it was just to see how well it would work. But you have a wide variety of shapes, sizes, and textures. And you can see here how different patterns create different types of paper. And what I like about doing them with junk mail is the fact until you actually roll it up, you have no idea what you're going to get. So this one here, I think actually looks really good because it's a range of different colors. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that. Please do go and watch all of the other videos that are on Margreth's and Toni's challenge. There are some really fantastic ones out there. Please hit subscribe and like my video if you did. And if you have any comments, how would you use these beads in your junk journaling? Have you any other ideas that I haven't mentioned or haven't thought about? Please do share those in the comments below.